Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to day two of Pathways to Hope. I hope yesterday reminded you of what's possible when people come together with a shared commitment to supporting mental health and strengthening their communities. Throughout this conference, we've seen that faith communities play a vital role in offering hope, reducing stigma, and helping people find connection and support. We've also been reminded that none of us does this work alone. Progress happens through partnership, compassion, and a willingness to walk alongside one another. As we begin our second day together, I encourage you to think about how you'll carry these conversations forward, whether it's a new partnership, a new idea, or simply a renewed sense of purpose. Each of us, each one of us has a role to play in helping people know they are not alone. Thank you for being part of this important gathering and for all you do throughout the year to serve your communities. I hope today leaves you inspired, encouraged, and ready to continue this important work. Have a wonderful day too, and above all, be well.
Good day, everyone, and thank you so much for being here and dedicating your time and energy to the mental health and wellness of yourself and your communities. I'd like to share a story with you. It's a moment in my life that I think back to a lot and in so many ways represents the power that faith traditions have in bringing us back from the depths of our despairs and challenges and can comfort us when we need it most. This past December, I was hospitalized for symptoms of bipolar 2 that had reached a point where I was no longer able to manage them on my own. It had even gotten to the point where my wife was told by a trusted psychiatrist that if I didn't agree to go willingly, I'd have to go forcibly. Thankfully, I recognized the severity of the situation and I agreed to go, but it still wasn't easy. I was leaving my 3-year-old daughter behind and my wife, who was 8 months pregnant at the time, and there was a chance she'd give birth while I was in the hospital. On top of that, as a Jew, I was admitted a couple of days before the Sabbath, or Shabbos, as many Jews pronounce it, and what was a weekly experience that is normally spent in the warm embrace of family, friends, and community was going to be spent with strangers in a psych ward. So as you can imagine, it was fairly distressing, and I cried a lot that first night. But thankfully, I did acclimate to the environment after a couple of days, but it still felt foreign. And when Shabbos finally came around, I tried to mark the occasion in any way I could. I got my nicest sweater, I had a dessert my wife had brought me, and I had some challah bread, but I didn't feel the holiness of the day in the way I would have otherwise. But then I walked back to my room, and I locked eyes with someone in the room next to me. He was an older gentleman, roughly in his 40s, with a white beard and a yarmulke like mine. I'd seen an extra kosher tray at meals, but the owner never came to claim it, so this was the first time I'd actually had the chance to meet him, but he didn't seem in the mood to meet anyone. However, in that small moment, late on a Friday night, when we locked eyes, we exchanged the traditional greeting reserved for the Sabbath day. Quietly, almost in a whisper, "Good Shabbos." He turned back into his room and he laid down in his bed, and I returned to my room, but I suddenly felt a rush of that warmth that I normally feel on Shabbos at home, realizing that despite the depths of my pain and the distance I felt from my family and my community, and where I was, it was still Shabbos. What Abraham Joshua Heschel called a palace in time, a holy day dedicated to connecting to our communities and God that is always accessible. Despite my circumstances, I felt uplifted by the day's holiness, thanks to just 2 words whispered between 2 people going through tremendous challenges. There's an interesting law in the Hebrew Bible that underscores this aspect of religious practice and faith, its mobility, such that we can access it wherever we are. The law has to do with the Holy Ark that contained the tablets Moses received on Mount Sinai, carried by the Israelites on their journey through the desert, and kept in the Holy of Holies in the tabernacle before permanently being housed in the temple in Jerusalem. The tabernacle was a mobile sanctuary made up of pieces that could be dismantled and carried, and the implements of the sanctuary had rings and poles they'd use to carry them from place to place. but the poles were removable. The ark, however, while it had poles as well, had a requirement that the poles never be removed. Jewish commentaries ponder why that would be the case. Some suggest it's practical. The ark was so precious, should they need to move quickly, God didn't want them to ever be in a position where they might not secure the poles tightly enough and drop it. But a 19th century scholar, Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, offers a different explanation. He wrote that the idea of the ark, what it represented, was our faith tradition, its values and its ideals and practices. And our tradition must always be accessible and mobile. Our faith is not confined to any single space, such that it's distant from us or inaccessible. It's always there to comfort us in times of grief and enliven us in times of joy. And I think the same applies to all faith traditions. We need to always remember that our faith is always there, even when it feels distant, because that is what can carry us. The Talmud makes a beautiful observation. It says that while the Israelites carried the ark through the desert, the ark was really carrying them, sustaining them through the challenges of the wilderness. I share this because this notion that we do and must always have access to the tools and the tool belts of our traditions can be so beneficial to our mental health and wellness, those moments when we feel lost in the wilderness. Faith practices are lived values that can sustain us, and we might not always feel them, but we need to hold on to our values and practices for when we need them most. There's a story told of the Hasidic rabbi, the Kotzker Rebbe, who once asked, "Why does it say in the Hebrew Bible, these words shall be on your heart? Why on and not in?" He answered, "The heart is not always open. Therefore, the Bible says, lay these words on your heart, so that when your heart opens, they will be there, ready to fall in." However, this is only true if we let them in. In my own work, teaching mental health and wellness through the lens of the Jewish faith, I've on more than one occasion gotten pushback from people who don't see what a faith tradition from thousands of years ago has to offer someone living in the 21st century. People are skeptical of the religious project and its ability to truly speak to challenges of the modern era, like depression, anxiety, or loneliness. But the truth is, they have so much to offer us. The project of religion is one that speaks not just to the mystical or esoteric parts of faith that may feel ancient and antiquated, but to the frail and fundamental parts of what it means to be human. 2,000 years ago, human beings might not have had smartphones or artificial intelligence, but they were still human. The challenges of the modern day are not new, they just manifest differently. Just like us, people had worries, dreams, and aspirations, and faced failures and hardships. And religion as a practice was there to alleviate those people of their suffering and heal them in surprisingly sophisticated ways. In my time with you, I'd like to focus on two core features of religious practice found in all faiths and the mental health benefits of those practices that you can consider taking to your communities from the perspective of the Jewish faith: prayer and study. Prayer is an essential aspect of religious experience. But while so many people pray daily, they don't always fully appreciate the ways prayer can actually help to nurture our mental health and wellness with its routines and ways of thinking that can act as self-care. The National Wellness Institute promotes the use of the 6 dimensions of wellness: occupational, emotional, spiritual, social, intellectual, and physical, which build a holistic sense of wellness, which in turn helps build resilience and enable us to thrive amidst life's challenges. Judaism's conception and implementation of prayer emphasizes the spiritual, emotional, and social dimensions of wellness, and offers faith traditions a useful way of framing prayer that highlights the practical and spiritual benefits of it. The first dimension of wellness I'd like to speak about is the dimension of social wellness, which follows these tenets. It is better to contribute to the common welfare of our community than to think only of ourselves. It is better to live in harmony with others in our environment than to live in conflict with them. Jewish prayers accomplish our need to live in harmony with others and regularly think of ourselves as being a part of a community with its liturgy by usually being written in the plural. The standard opening of most Jewish blessings refers to our God rather than my God. The reason for this can be found in the Talmud, which recalls the sage Abaye once saying, "At all times a person should associate himself with the congregation and should not pray for himself alone." The second dimension prayer speaks to is emotional wellness, which follows these tenets. It is better to be aware of and accept our feelings than to not deny them. It is better to be optimistic in our approach to life than pessimistic. About prayer, Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch again wrote The Hebrew word for prayer, hitbalel, is a grammatically reflective verb, originally meant to deliver an opinion about oneself, to judge oneself, or an inner attempt at doing so. It denotes prayer to be a step out of active life to attempt to gain a true judgment of one's relationship to God and the world to oneself. He recognized that prayer is not only supplication, but also reflection and introspection. When we pray, we should be thinking about what we're saying, coming to a deeper understanding of ourselves, and leaving the prayer experience transformed, living the emotional dimension of wellness. Finally, the third dimension of wellness prayer speaks to is a spiritual wellness dimension, which follows these tenets. It is better to ponder the meaning of life for ourselves and to be tolerant of the beliefs of others than to close our minds and become intolerant. It is better to live each day in a way that is consistent with our values and beliefs than to do otherwise and feel untrue to ourselves. The spiritual dimension of wellness necessitates creating moments to ponder the meaning of life for ourselves and align our internal worlds with our external worlds and live our most authentic and fulfilling lives. This goal can be seen as being addressed within the daily recitation of the Shema prayer in Jewish liturgy and its accompanying verses, in the morning and evening. The verse we recite, along with the Shema, is, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might," from Deuteronomy. Jewish commentators have had a lot to say about the Shema, but a central theme of this line is that we are tasked with bringing all of ourselves to the table in the way we serve God and by extension impact the world at large. That is the mindset with which we're supposed to start and end each day. Prayer in Jewish thought is both supplication and reflection. In reciting this prayer, we are saying we will bring all of ourselves to the table, and we should be thinking about what that means for us. In prayer, we should be asking ourselves, what special, unique things are we bringing to the table, and hopefully live our lives according to that most authentic version of ourselves. Prayer can help ensure we are connecting with God and making the most of our unique talents and abilities. When framed properly, prayer is so much more than a collection of supplications. It is a carefully composed method of imbuing our lives with values and ideas that can fill our days with spirituality and mental wellness. Consider composing your own prayer with these ideas in mind and the particular needs of you and your community, and create a practice of reciting it regularly. The second aspect of religious practice that you can consider emphasizing in your communities is an emphasis on study. Study is a religious act in Jewish tradition, as it involves a melding of the minds of ourselves and God's wisdom. However, it's also an act of connection to our past through studying the thoughts and beliefs of commentators and religious thinkers in the Talmud and other religious literatures. To learn from our past is to never truly be alone. It's to be present with the people who came before you. But study in the Jewish faith is also an act of connection between people in the practice of Chavruta study. Chavruta, literally translated as friend or partner, has been a core element of Jewish education for thousands of years. Within this method of study, as opposed to education being purely lecture style, learning is an act of partnership. Pairs of learners sit next to or across from one another and review religious texts together, reading them out loud, perhaps along with a commentary, and trading interpretations of the text. Chavruta study is a great tool for achieving academic excellence, but there's another element of text study in Chavruta that can make it a useful tool for fostering mental wellness and community in all faiths. Learning in close partnership builds trust, connection, and empathy. Researchers of pedagogy, Ellie Holzer and Orit Kent, describe the educational value of Chavruta learning. A key aspect of Chavruta learning, they assert, is the responsibility learners need to have for each other. They call this the ethical relational aspect of Chavruta learning. In Chavruta learning, learning becomes an interpersonal and connective experience between peers through engagement with one another. Chavruta learning requires the cultivation of dispositions such as attention, openness, wholeheartedness toward the partner. Chavruta learning holds the potential to serve as a humanizing activity and may also be conceptualized as the locus for the cultivation of interpersonal relationships. Holzer and Kent cite a passage by Jewish theologian Martin Buber that demonstrates the power of this kind of dialogue to serve as a means of affirming and accepting others. He wrote, "In genuine dialogue, the turning to the partner takes place in all truth. That is, it is a turning of the being, but the speaker does not merely perceive the one who is present to him in this way, he receives him as his partner by accepting him as my partner in genuine dialogue. I have affirmed him as a person." One Rabbi Gil Steinlauf once described Chavruta study in the following way. In Chavruta, he wrote, our responsibility to act is reinforced not only through our shared partnership, but also in our shared connection to our sacred texts, our shared history and values, and in our shared relationship to our God who exhorts us to justice. This method of study can be applied to all faith traditions. Community members can be assigned learning partners, spend time in independent study of a given text, and a commentary or reflection on that text, and come back together as a group to share their insights. This method builds a community of partnership and connection to the sacred wisdom of our traditions, the people who came before us, and one another, and pushes learners to find themselves in the things they connect to in our sacred traditions. However, the partnerships that form between these pairings of chavrutot aren't limited to academics. They can be connections we lean on when we need them most. There's a passage in the Talmud that I'd like to share with all of you that applies especially to those of us who may be struggling with caring for others. The passage tells the story of a 3rd century sage, Rabbi Yochanan, who would always visit his students when they fell ill and would help them recover. However, one day Rabbi Yochanan fell ill himself, and his student came and offered his teacher the same help Rabbi Yochanan had offered him. And the Talmud wonders why that was necessary. Surely, if Rabbi Yochanan knew how to heal and care for others, he could take care of himself. But the Talmud answers something powerful. It says that a prisoner cannot free himself from prison, but depends on others to release him from his shackles. While many of us may normally be in the position of care provider, often we need help and care for ourselves. And we need to remember to have loved ones and friends, chavrutas, there to heal us and care for us when we need healing. I've had plenty of days where I felt down, lonely, and depressed, but found myself reinvigorated by a learning chavruta session. It's a moment where you get to feel seen and heard in intimate dialogue with another person over a shared heritage, connecting me to my past, grounding me in the present, and preparing me for the future. These are just 2 examples, seen from the Jewish faith but applicable to all faiths, where ancient practice speaks to modern needs of self-care and connection. And when you look at faith through the lens of the humanity our faiths are trying to speak to, you can unlock an entirely new dimension of religious life that nurtures the mind, body, and soul. Thank you.
Vi un comentario que hicieron en las redes sociales que decía, necesito que me reconozcan y que me den un premio por siempre actuar de que estoy feliz, cuando por dentro me estoy muriendo.
Tú me puedes ver bien contenta, y ay, pero por dentro estoy que yo no quiero estar aquí. Y muchas veces nadie te lo podría imaginar.
Cuando se trata de salud mental no se ve. No se ve, entonces es difícil para la gente entender por lo que está pasando a uno.
Bueno, tal vez a veces no se ve, pero siento que lo reflejas. Si tú estás mal, no se ve, pero lo reflejas y no nada más estás afectada tú, afectas a tus hijos, afectas a tu pareja, te alejas de tus amistades, entonces no se ve, pero lo reflejas.
Todavía está el estigma y es un tabú todavía para muchos.
Yo creo que es algo que se vive mucho en la comunidad latina, la falta de información, la falta de recursos que tiene uno como familia hispana, y es muy difícil en ocasiones porque llegas al punto de que ya no puedes más. Se me olvida que no solamente soy trabajadora, no solamente soy mamá, también soy mujer y también soy yo, mi propia persona. Se me olvida que yo tengo que cuidar de mí, se me olvida que yo existo también.
No te detengas. Si tú no buscas la felicidad, tú siempre vas a estar en un cuarto encerrada. Tienes que abrir la puerta para que tu corazón esté feliz.
Greetings, everyone. I am Dr. Tawana House, Director of Programs for NAMI Emerald Coast. I also serve as Secretary on the Executive Committee for our NAMI National FaithNet Council. I am a faith leader in my community, and I have served as a pastor for over 15 years. However, I struggled with my mental health condition for years, even while serving and leading my respective faith community. I lived with depression for 30 years, and I've attempted suicide 3 times. The last time I tried to take my life, I was pregnant. My son is 15 now. For a long time, I believed that needing help or counseling, even medication, meant I didn't have enough faith. Like if I really trusted God, I wouldn't feel this way. I felt ashamed because I had a mental health condition. I felt like I failed as a spiritual leader and not being an example of what living by faith should look like. In 2013, I decided to finally get the help I needed. During that time, there were several faith leaders who completed suicides as well. And at that moment, I heard the Spirit of God say to me, who is going to answer the cries of faith leaders struggling in their minds while trying to lead? In 2014, I became a member of my NAMI affiliate. I also founded my nonprofit, Beacon of Hope Champions Ministries, LLC, an organization that provides tools, resources, and support to faith leaders and members to become mentally and emotionally healthy, which is essential for spiritual growth. What if FaithNet was available to me back then? How would it have impacted my mental health journey? I am grateful that NAMI has this initiative to help me and many others to know it is nothing wrong in how you choose to believe just because you have a mental health condition. In fact, belief is defined as a state or habit of mind in which trust or confidence is placed in some person or thing. You heard previously from our chair, Doug Beach, about our founding of our NAMI National FaithNet Council that partners with our National Board of Directors to support our FaithNet initiative and its ongoing development to further its mission, to build bridges between mental health, spiritual, and faith communities, provide NAMI field leaders with the resources needed to form meaningful partnerships, and ensure that spiritual and faith communities have the resources and support needed in their communities. Our FaithNet initiative supports the equipping and empowerment of affiliate leaders and members with tools and resources to facilitate increased awareness, collaboration, and partnership with spiritual communities in the areas where we serve. We also strive to encourage community faith leaders to connect with their local NAMI affiliates to partner on our FaithNet initiative to bring resources to their respective faith communities. Most importantly, NAMI FaithNet recognizes the critical role that faith and spirituality are protective factors that play vital roles in achieving and sustaining recovery. It promotes understanding and collaboration to address mental health and well-being with compassion and knowledge. On May 21st, 2026, NAMI launched its NAMI FaithNet Learning Collaborative as part of NAMI's expansion of resources and tools to our respective affiliates across the Alliance. It offers NAMI field leaders the opportunity for peer-to-peer exchange through virtual meetings, including subject matter experts, affiliate members, and spiritual leaders. Our first webinar, FaithNet Learning Cohort, using the revised toolkit, featured a rich panel discussion and a review of the toolkit to use as a guide, not a script, to build on as a foundation for future partnerships, increased awareness, and fostering inclusiveness of all faiths and beliefs of individuals. Our second webinar was held on June 16th, using Bridges of Hope to build partnerships with faith communities, a review of our updated Bridges of Hope presentation. We had an enlightening conversation with Dr. Sherry Vaughn of NAMI, Kansas, who you will hear from later on today, and Tara Gwynn of NAMA, Wichita, on how they use Bridges of Hope as a basis for their Standing in the Gap faith-based initiative in partnering with several spiritual leaders throughout their state. Both recordings are available on demand at Vimeo, that's vimeo.com/NAMI National. Our next webinar will be on community engagement best practices, to be held this month after the Pathways to Hope conference. If you would like more information about NAMI FaithNet Learning Collaborative, email us at faithnet@nami.org. Before I close, I would like to share a word of wisdom with you. As human beings, we are created for connection, but we are also created to believe. Thank you for your time and attention. Enjoy the rest of our Pathways to Hope conference.
Hello, my name is Larry Leap. I'm a member of NAMI Missouri and NAMI Jefferson City. I'm a certified In Our Own Voice presenter, and that's why I'm here today, to speak to you and tell you my faith and mental health story. I have a chronic mental health condition, and I want to tell you all about it. I was an attorney in a prior life. I'm retired from the state of Missouri. I grew up in St. Louis, Ferguson to be exact. I've been married for 44 years, and we have one daughter. We live in Jefferson City, Missouri, and I love to cook, especially Chinese food. I was raised Presbyterian in what's now the PCUSA. We moved to Jefferson City in 1991 and found a Lutheran church. My wife's mother was already a member there, so we started attending and became members of St. Andrew's Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. My purpose today is to offer insights that matter to all of us about mental health conditions in ourselves and others that we care about affect us all. I want to share how a mental health condition has impacted my life and describe the habits and changes that support my mental health. And I'm also going to tell you about my faith journey and how it has helped me. Throughout my life, I've had periods of time where I've felt sad, lethargic, unmotivated, and with no energy. These episodes would last for days or even weeks or sometimes longer. I would ignore necessary things like keeping up with my hygiene, taking care of the mail, eating right, or keeping the house orderly. Now, I thought everyone felt this way at some time or another. I didn't realize that I was depressed. These episodes interfered with my schooling, my work, my relationships with my family and my friends. In 1993, I was first diagnosed with a mental health condition. I was 37. When I look back at my life, I recognize periods of depressive episode going as far back as high school and college. I began counseling in 1986 when I still lived in St. Louis, even though I had not been diagnosed with a mental health condition yet. And I've been in and out of counseling since, for most of my adult life. When I was first diagnosed with a mental health condition, I recognized that this was the best explanation of what was happening with me. And even though his diagnosis later proved to be wrong, it helped me understand what was going on. I was diagnosed as bipolar. I've been diagnosed with episodic depression. So at that time, I began treatment with the psychiatrist and resumed counseling. I've been on many different medications, probably most of them. At that time, I was working extremely hard for the Missouri House of Representatives as a research analyst. When I was diagnosed, I did not disclose that at work. I knew it would be harmful to my job and my career. Those with mental health conditions were viewed detrimentally in the political world in which I moved. I didn't want to disclose that and harm myself, so I only revealed my condition to family and a few trusted friends. In 1994, I was recruited to be general counsel of the Division of Workers' Compensation, and I went to work for one of the worst bosses I ever had. In 2000, I was promoted to division director. It was a more stressful time, and I had an even worse boss. It was a bad time in my life, and I realized my depression was getting worse. I was working 60 to 70 hours per week, and I was exclusively focused on my job. I was ignoring my family, my wife, and my daughter, and I felt terribly guilty. In 2006, I was dismissed from the division after the other party won the prior election. Later that year, I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, which turned out to be my correct diagnosis. I began looking for work after I was dismissed and looked for 7 years. I was unsuccessful all that time. My counselor told me I was so depressed it was coming across in my interviews and I was not going to be hired. So I decided to retire. I applied for Social Security disability and I was approved on my second application. I didn't even have to go to a hearing. We had income for the first time in 7 years. And we had gone through everything financially, all our assets, savings and retirement, my inheritance, and my wife's inheritance. At times, at the end of the month, we only had a few cents in our bank account. The financial stress was unbearable. I wasn't going to church very regularly. I wasn't praying. I wasn't doing devotions. I avoided my church family. My faith and my faith life waned. For the next few minutes, I'm going to talk about suicide. If that's a trigger or an issue for you, do what you need for yourself. Early in that year, in 2013, I hospitalized myself because I was ready to die by suicide. My wife got me to my counselor, who convinced me to go to the emergency room. I was in a place of extreme darkness. On the 1 to 10 pain scale healthcare providers use for physical injury, my mental pain exceeded 10. I had it all planned out. I was going to kill my wife and my daughter and then myself. I planned to use my best knife. I'm a cook. I have excellent knives. I was admitted to the mental health facility and I was there for 10 days. I saw the psychiatrist and counselor every day I was there. I learned a lot from the other patients that were there with me. My pastor came and we prayed together. During this time, I learned a lot about myself and I understood myself a lot better. I have never been to that dark place again. I know where it is and I've approached there, but I've not gone there, thank goodness. The reason I'm wearing this t-shirt is because of that. I don't know if you can read it or not, but it reads continue with a semicolon for the I. You are needed here. Since that time, I got a part-time job driving for an auto auction. I love to drive. We were still under a great amount of financial stress. We sold our home at a loss and moved into a rental house. For a long time, neither of us had any health insurance, so we accumulated a lot of medical debt, and it ruined our credit rating. Later, my state pension started, and that relieved our financial stress. I'm proud to say we paid off all our debt and have restored our credit rating. Then COVID happened. Our church used Zoom, and we had services every week. I had Zoom sessions with my psychiatrist and counselor. All of these helped a lot with the connections, keep me connected to my sanity. I worked on Sunday Forum for the first time. After COVID, I no longer worked, at least for pay. I volunteered for NAMI Missouri, NAMI Jefferson City, and my church, St. Andrews. I love the work I do for these organizations. I feel like I'm doing a little bit of good in my small corner of the world. For me, medications, medical care, and counseling help. I take 3 psychiatric meds, and they work pretty well. I want to talk a little bit about relationships with counselors and psychiatrists. I believe it is so important to have a good relationship with them, and I've been through several. We need a trusting relationship with them in order to improve. I've been with my current counselor since 2006. I recently had to change my psychiatrist. I had been with my prior psychiatrist for 12 years. I've been with my new psychiatrist going on 2 years now, and we're building a good relationship and trust. With my church family, there are 2 things that are so important for me. The first are my relationships with people and the sense of community and love that I feel. And the second is the mission work that we do for the least of these. I realize I'm still in recovery. I will have depressive episodes for the rest of my life. That's the reality of major depressive disorder. That's what major depressive disorder is, a chronic mental health condition. My wife, family, and church family are very supportive of me. In 2012, I came out publicly as a person with a mental health condition for the first time. I made a presentation to my church about my mental health and faith journey. The congregation members were very supportive, and I felt a great deal of love and community. It amazed me the number of members that came up and told me that they had dealt with a mental health condition, or they had a family member or a friend that had a mental health condition. I want to change tack just a little bit and talk more about my faith journey. I've always been a member of a liberal mainline Protestant church, first the Presbyterian Church and now the Lutheran Church. I've been very active with both. I was taught early on to question my faith and my beliefs, and I do that. Because of that, periods of my life, I've considered myself an agnostic, primarily while I was in college. If you're looking for a Bible story about me, look to Doubting Thomas. That's me. I doubt, I question. In the past, theology held a great interest for me. I wanted to understand the whys of my faith and my beliefs. Just don't ask me about the Holy Trinity. I cannot get my head around that. Now, doing good works for our church, helping the least of these is most important to me. My mental health journey and my faith journey are intertwined. My road to recovery improved greatly when I first spoke about my mental health condition and faith journey at St. Andrews. I've grown closer to God through prayer. I can converse with my pastor and other members about my mental health conditions. Through conversations with my counselor, my psychiatrist, and my pastor, I've come to realize that there is no easy fix for a mental health condition. You can't pray it away. Prayer doesn't work that way. Those who say that faith and prayer are enough to cure a mental health condition are wrong. And they stigmatize those who deal with a mental health condition and can cause religious trauma for that person. Faith and prayer help me deal with the realities of life, but there's no magic bullet. Faith and prayer can help. I don't want to mislead you, but it is not the cure. Since I made that presentation, I've been very open about my mental health condition. I speak to groups like this. I write about it on Facebook. I talk with my family and friends. And for this reason, I've become a certified mental health first aid provider. I do this to help others understand the reality of mental illness. I love public speaking. I can stand up and talk about my mental health journey, where many cannot. I do it to reduce the stigma for those with mental health conditions. I do it to provide support to those who need help. Doing this helps me cope. I get a sense of accomplishment from doing these presentations. So what's next for me? I believe part of the plan for me is to love and support my family, my friends, my God, and my church family. I get up every day. Sometimes that in and of itself is an accomplishment. On good days, which are most of the time, I read, write, get out in the community, engage with friends, and do many other things. I try to be productive every day of my life. It can be a simple thing like cooking dinner, or something as complicated as writing an analysis of Missouri constitutional amendment ballot issues for Facebook. My goal is to continue to be involved with my church and NAMI. Our church's motto is God's work, our hands, and I truly believe in that. The volunteer work that we do to further that mission and help the least of these in our society is so important. I've been active in NAMI since 2022. I'm a certified presenter for In Our Own Voice, Holding Hope, and FaithNet. I'm a member of the NAMI Missouri Board of Directors, and I'm the Missouri representative on the NAMI National FaithNet Advisory Council. This is work I love and continue to do so I can educate others about mental health and help reduce the stigma for persons with mental health conditions. My journey shows things can improve for those of us with a mental health condition, and recovery is possible. My life and my faith show this every day. I am with you and support you, whoever you are and wherever you may be. You are needed here. I wish you the best, and I love you all. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome you all to Pathways to Hope Conference 2026. I'm Charu Agarwal. I'm the lead consultant for NAMI's Chai and Chat initiative, which serves the South Asian diaspora. I'm a practicing Hindu myself, and today I have with us our guest speaker, Reverend Dr. Sherry Vaughn. Dr. Sherry Vaughn, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Sharu. I'm happy to be here. So as Sharu said, I'm Reverend Dr. Sherry Vaughn. I am the Executive Director for NAMI Kansas, and I am also on staff with my local church, the Topeka Church of the Nazarene here in Topeka, Kansas.
Thank you, Reverend Sherry Vaughn. How do you see faith and mental health working together to support healing?
Spirituality, faith, and mental health, I believe, go hand in hand. When our spiritual side is in alignment with our higher power, then we can also put our mental health in alignment as well, whether it's our alignment within our individual self or our alignment with our horizontal spheres of influence and interactions.
Wow, thank you, Reverend Vaughn. This was great. Now, I am a practicing Hindu. You know, when I go to the temples, they are more like, especially for the diaspora, the temples, mosques, and gurdwaras are your second home. So when you go there, there's also this stigma of what will people say, you know, and you don't want to really talk about mental health, which is so stigmatized, especially in minoritized communities. So what role do you think faith leaders have in reducing stigma in all communities?
I think they have a very powerful role. 1 in 4 individuals who have a lived experience of mental illness, maybe they're in a state of crisis or they are a family member of one who has a lived experience of mental illness, they will go to their faith leaders. And so it's important for our faith leaders to be equipped to be ready to have that conversation and to do so in a very compassionate way as well, looking out both for the family member and the individual who's coming and seeking their help and advice. I can go a little bit further as what it relates to in the rural and the frontier communities, as it relates to stigma. So oftentimes in our rural and frontier communities, everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows what each other drives. And if their pickup truck is parked in front of the local community mental health center, then that's the talk of the town regarding that observation. But if they see that pickup truck at the local church, faith-based community, whatever setting they may see, then it's not the talk of the town, and they can reach out and they can seek that help and get some information and hopefully get some recommendations to help and services.
Yeah, so true, Reverend Juan. I feel like the faith-based places have to be your first stop to getting help. Makes so much sense. So if you see someone struggling with their mental health in your congregation, how do you approach them with compassion so they can get connected to those professional services which can help them? Have you
Absolutely.
seen that in your congregation?
Yes, oftentimes. So I'm in Topeka, and we are in the downtown area. So there's a great deal of individuals who are part of the homeless population that may come into our church on a worship Sunday. And oftentimes I may see maybe that individual or another individual who may be just a little bit off, struggling just a little bit. And I may just go up and introduce myself and just be present with them, and give them an opportunity to engage in conversation with me. And wherever that conversation leads, then that's what I go with. If they ask, what do I do at that church, I'll show them the bulletin that may be in their hand that shows that I'm the mental health liaison. I just say, oh yeah, this is me, I'm that person. And sometimes that opens up the door for that conversation as well. So it's really more about being present, having a listening ear, engaging them compassionately, and just waiting on them to share what they need to share for that moment in time.
This is a great message, Reverend Juan, especially for interfaith leaders who are tuning in today and listening to this conversation. So thank you so much. So Dr. Juan, you also started Standing in the Gap organization. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I will. So Standing in the Gap came about when we were looking for opportunities to reach out into our rural and frontier communities. And in Kansas, our rural and frontier communities oftentimes considered the Bible belts of Kansas. And so knowing 1 in 4 is going to go to their faith leader, we knew that we absolutely had to include Bridges of Hope into our presentation when we go out and meet with people in the rural and frontier communities. But beyond just Bridges of Hope, we also needed to make sure that folks knew how to get connected with local resources and to be able to be equipped with tools, materials, information needed to help them not just start the conversation, but to also continue the conversation that's thereafter. So all of that came together into Standing in the Gap. So we look at it as from the book of Ezekiel, when God says, who among you will stand in the gap and pray for my people? But for us, it was, who among us will stand in the gap and help our neighbors? Because our neighbors in our rural and frontier communities are struggling. The suicide rates among our ranchers and farmers and rural and frontier individuals and family members is skyrocketing. So who among us will stand in the gap and help our neighbors? So that's where Standing in the Gap came from.
Wow, that's so awesome, Reverend Juan. So Stand in the Gap really plays on its name, and it is what the name suggests. So what I'm hearing is that it's like a mobile service. You go to the frontier, maybe do you use the churches there to go and present? Yeah.
Yes, we do. They are key to even getting a Standing in the Gap presentation stood up in their local community. So it's our local faith-based leaders that we're reaching out to help us do that.
Okay. So what does a presentation look like for Standing in the Gap? What do people expect when they hear about Standing in the Gap?
So it's an all-day event, and it starts with the Bridges of Hope. So we offer that presentation. We have modified that slightly, and we modify it from presentation to presentation as well. It's depending upon what is the need in that community. And so we modify it slightly and add a little bit more information into that presentation. And then we go into a round table where we start to unpack that information that was just shared. So when you spend 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes presenting on any topic of any kind, it's important to stop, take a breath, let's unpack what we just heard. So we do that in round style table format to do that. And then once we unpack the Standing or the Bridges of Hope information that's been revealed to them, then we start looking at the statistics. So we use the statistics that NAMI offers for rural and frontier, as well as the faith-based statistics that they have. And then we also pull in statewide statistics as it relates specifically to that rural and frontier community. So maybe it's suicide rates or substance use diagnosis or overdoses. And we bring that into that conversation as well, and still very roundtable format. So it's the folks sitting at that table, they're dialoguing with one another. So we often say, start the conversation. This is our way of, we started the conversation with Bridges of Hope. Now we're going to continue that conversation throughout the rest of the day. So then after we do the roundtable formats, then we go into a sharing your story. This is where we really put a stomp on stigma. So we have up to 7 people who say, yes, I am going to come and share my story about mental health or their journey on their mental health diagnosis or as a family member. So we have family and individuals, and they share that story. They got about 5 minutes. They share their story. They open up. And they're there, vulnerable, and the audience that's there, they're able to hear that story. Again, it's continuing that conversation and then putting a stomp on stigma itself. And then we open it up for questions from the audience. So maybe they heard something and they want to unpack that further. Again, when we did the roundtable, we were unpacking. So we've already introduced them into the understanding and the belief that it's okay to unpack and it's okay to ask more questions. And so they have that opportunity to ask questions to the panelists for the sharing your story. And then the last thing that we do is the town hall. And this is where we have invited in local community resources. Maybe it's the community mental health center, maybe it's a consumer ran organization, maybe it's another community resource that offers help and assistance with mental health issues or other needs that an individual may have. And they get to share about their resources and how to get a hold of them. And again, it's about equipping those participants and attendees with the information, the tools, the resources that they're going to need. So when they go back into their faith-based community or back into their bank or back into their agricultural organization or wherever it is that they came from, they've got these tools that they can take back with them. So we started the conversation, we continued the conversation throughout the day, we equipped them with resources and information and materials, and then we're inviting them to go out into their communities, their spheres of influence, and continue the conversation.
Well, that's a lot that you pack in 90 minutes, you said, right? And
that's an all day. No, it's an all day event.
It's an all-day event. Wow. Okay.
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
great that you start with the, roundtable conversation, which we have seen when we do our Sharing Hope initiative. We always talk about taking the food to people. And that's
Yes,
exactly what I'm hearing from you. So you take it to where people are and meeting them where they are, which is great,
yes,
which is great. And you also end up connecting them to the services, which,
yes.
yeah. And Reverend Vaughn, you wear so many hats. You are an executive director, you are a reverend, you have Stand Up in the Gap organization that you also manage. What does your daily agenda look like? I'm curious.
Oh, it's
Busy.
yeah. I said earlier to Dawn when we talked today that oftentimes I find myself failing to be a human being and being a human doing. And so yes, these things need to be done. Yes, I wear these hats and I'm going to do the task, do the activity, make it happen. And I do that all day long. So yes, there's there's a lot on that plate as well. And then I'm also on staff at my local church as their mental health liaison. So sometimes I have to wear that hat as well. I'm expecting a phone call later today from an individual that connected with our church whose father just got released from a psychiatric unit with a mental health crisis, and she's reaching out wanting to know what are the resources, where can I go to get help for myself so that I can get my oxygen mask on, and then how do I help my dad. So it's a nonstop. I get up in the morning, I drink my coffee, and I come to work, and I'm doing all day long. But it's rewarding work as well, and it does make me stop and appreciate why I'm in this seat and doing the work that I'm doing, especially when I encounter those individuals that we're able to find a win-win for them in their moment of need.
Thank you, Dr. Reverend Vaughn, for everything that you do for the communities. Now, when you go to the churches and the frontier areas, the community landscape is changing, right? There's a lot of diversity in around the country now. Do you see people from different, backgrounds there? How do you serve them? Like interfaith. I'll give you a little bit background about myself.
Okay.
So I'm a practicing Hindu, but I grew up in a Catholic boarding school in India. And I also am from state of Punjab, which has a Sikh, religion very dominantly present there. So we ended up even embracing a lot of principles from that religion and going to Gurdwaras every week. Just so I believe that I'm a very, an interfaith person. I take a little bit of whatever works for me from different religions and I try to apply that. And I also, today it just came up in one of my feeds that live in harmony rather than striving to live in balance, which I thought is so profound because talking to you, it feels like you live in harmony. You take everything that comes your way and you're like, okay, I'm going to do this today and maybe this can be pushed back to tomorrow. Right? So how would
Sometimes.
you, yeah. So how would you, talk to people who are not Christians, who are from different religions?
So I think again what I do is just be present, and answer any questions that they may have. When I look at scripture and I could say, hey, in the book of Ezekiel, it said this about, who among you will stand in the gap. In the Hindu faith, is there something similar that you can reflect on that resonates with standing in the gap as well? Or if you're Muslim, is there something in the Quran that also provides that resonation with standing in the gap? And so it's looking for those opportunities of common ground that we can all agree with. But I can't imagine anybody not agreeing with, we need to end stigma about mental health. And how can we do that? And how can we meet people where they're at, regardless of what their faith background may be, so that they can get help, they can get the best care, and they can prioritize mental health in their own lives? How can we do that together and collectively? And so it's about being present. It's about being able to listen and to find those opportunities of common ground as well.
Thank you, Reverend. I think this was great. In Hindi, we have a word which we say seva. Seva means service in English when translated. And I think that's so universal across every religion. It's like if you're in service to others, there's so much satisfaction, and it feels like you're doing just seva or service for people, especially in Kansas area. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Reverend. When you do these presentations, and who do you invite to present? Are these clinicians? Are these lay people like myself, community members?
We cast the net very wide. Earlier, I said you may be from a bank, or you may be from an agricultural community or a community mental health center, or the local church, or a governing body, or law enforcement, or first responders. We cast that net so wide that we want anybody and everybody who sees our announcement that we're coming to do a Standing in the Gap in your community, anybody and everybody who has a heart and who wants to learn more about this. Maybe they're struggling, maybe a family member struggling, or a community member, neighbor, colleague, you name it, that they want to come and learn more and be a part of something in their community that helps them stand in the gap as well.
Thank you, Reverend. I'm hearing that it's tailored to fit everybody's needs, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Yes. Now, do you offer continuing education credits like CEUs?
We do. So in Kansas, we have the Behavioral Health Services Regulatory Board. And so you submit an application to that board to be a CEU provider. And so we are a CEU provider under that board. So we're able to offer CEUs for any program that we put on across the state of Kansas, especially the Standing in the Gaps.
Perfect. Thank you, Reverend. And before we end today, I would love for you to share a message or nuggets of wisdom with faith leaders who are listening in today.
So, yeah, I got this question earlier, and number one is start the conversation. Don't struggle with trying to find the right words, because you're not going to find the right words. Just start the conversation. And then continue that conversation, just as you heard me share, about our Standing in the Gap. We started it, we've continued it throughout the day, and now we have equipped and invited others to go out and continue the conversation as well. And if you are within a faith-based community, show up at your worship service and bring some mental health materials and resources with you. Lay them around throughout your faith-based community for others to pick up. Maybe it's a 988 card, or maybe it's your local affiliate business card. But go ahead and lay that information and material around for others to be able to pick up. And very, very important is be unafraid. Do not fear. And be present. And so you pull all that together, and you're going to do amazing things, reaching into your communities and reaching those who may be struggling with mental illness, or who have a family member struggling with mental illness. So those are my wisdom nuggets for today.
Yeah, great wisdom nuggets, Reverend Vaughn, and it is a pleasure to be in this conversation with you. I know we packed
Likewise.
a lot in these last few minutes, but thank you so much for conversing with me today.
Thank you, Sharu. Great job today as well. Thank you.
Thank you.